Investing in a greener future is not a choice, but a necessity. And the green transition represents the investment opportunity of a lifetime in terms of generating above-market returns at scale. FSN Capital is looking to set an example by driving all of their 30 companies to net zero and by funding and scaling solutions that combat climate change while generating exceptional returns for their investors. I sat down at the COP28 talks here in Dubai to talk to the founder and chairman of FSN Capital, Frode Strand Nielsen. So we are here at COP28, a very exciting time. What are you hoping to sort of achieve out of the event over the next couple of weeks?
I want to learn. I think we're at a critical juncture of the planet, and we need to accelerate change, and I want to understand the processes that drives those changes. And then I also want to learn something closer to heart, which is the industries, how industries are changing, how climate finance is changing, and what is going in the academic and the consulting world in terms of what they're saying about how we should drive this change.
Well, let's go and continue the conversation up in the studio.
Looking forward to that.
Frode Strand Nielsen, the UAE announced a 30 billion climate investment vehicle. What are your thoughts and comments on that?
I think that's really positive. I think, and if you put it in a bigger context, we have today a 40 trillion funding gap to stay on the 1.5 degree pathway to 2030. That number is going to grow to $125 trillion by 2050 if we're going to get to net zero. Now, in order to get there, you're going to have to mobilize private institutional capital. So as a case in point, if you go back 2 years to COP26 in Glasgow, Larry Fink said the following. He said, we have the capital, we have the challenges, we see the challenges. What we need is the plumbing to get the capital to the challenges. And we at FSN, we think that the private equity industry can be a very important role in that plumbing. The private equity industry has the skills and experience to raise capital, to deploy capital to the right projects, to scale those projects, those companies and those technologies, and create an above market return in the process. That is why the UAE has partnered with the likes of TPG and Brookfield and BlackRock, because they have those skills, and that's what the big sovereign wealth funds needs to deploy capital to it.
And a great opportunity to announce it here as well on just the first couple of days, which is quite an achievement and quite a pledge in itself. You're the founder and chairman of FSN Capital. Tell us a little bit more about the company and what you do.
We're a Northern European private equity company working out of Munich, Stockholm, Copenhagen and Oslo. We invest in companies within the technology and software sector, within the service sector, the industrial sector, and increasingly in the green transition sector, with a view to develop sustainable leaders with high ethical standards. And we typically scale those companies out of Europe or out of the Nordics and make them global, the companies that we invest in.
So you said you raise capital, you have funds, but what about investing in companies within the green transition space?
Yeah, so what we're doing in the green transition, we're basically decarbonizing the companies we own, but then we also deploy capital towards companies that contribute to driving the green transition. So we focused on 3 sectors: green energy systems, which is solar, wind and battery systems; green buildings, which are green building materials, energy saving systems; and sustainable industrial processes, which is basically electrifying industry and recycling in industry.
So how and why are you diversifying investment then for the green energy transition?
The green energy transition is the biggest capital reallocation of our time, in the history of the world, in fact. And that means to us it's an enormous investment opportunity. We see that there's a need for active owners to drive the green transition. There's opportunities to buy companies, develop them and scale them, and to make a very healthy return for our investors.
So how are you working with your own companies then to drive decarbonisation standards across the board?
Okay. We have signed up to the Science Based Target Initiative. We were actually working together with 6 European private equity companies 2 years back to take the initiative, the GFANZ, the Glasgow Alliance for Financial Alliance for Net Zero, which Mark Carney launched, and to tailor that to the private equity industry, because SBTIs was not really tailored to private companies, it was tailored to large asset managers in the financial industry. We spent 12 months doing that, and together with the SBTI, and they approved the approach that we took, and we're now rolling that out in all our companies. So in essence, what we do is, how we do that is, in each company, they have to set a baseline, they have to measure how much emissions do they have currently, and then they have to make a plan and set targets for how to reduce that. Then they send that plan to the Science Based Target Initiative, get it validated, gets it back, and then they're committed. Now the real work starts. So essentially, how we approach that at each company is we analyze and develop what we call the carbon abatement curve. And what the carbon abatement curve is a curve like this, and on the horizontal axis you have all the initiatives that's going to reduce emissions by impact, and then on the vertical axis you have the cost of implementing each initiative. Now when you do that, you end up with a curve that starts below the line and it goes above the line, because you got the cost here. So what that means is that in a typical manufacturing company, you'll see that 1/3 of your initiatives, abatement initiatives, will have a positive effect on the cost of the company. So they will lower the cost base. Another 1/3 will bring you back to neutral, so now you're at 60-70% and you haven't raised the cost level of the business. But then you get to the difficult last 1/3. That's where you have additional cost to implement those initiatives. And that of course are the difficult initiatives to deal with. That creates internal debate, some resistance in the organization. And there we work very closely with our companies to develop countermeasures so that we make sure that when we decarbonize them, we do not impair the competitiveness of the company. In fact, we believe that when you decarbonize, you increase over time the competitiveness of the company.
Well, in this pursuit of net zero, why is, not just in the environmental impact, what else is very important to FSN Capital then as well?
I think, what's important is that, you can kind of look at it two ways. We invest with a social conscience. We want our companies to have a clear purpose, meaning what does this company do beyond just making a profit? What value does it have to society? We wouldn't invest in anything that doesn't have, some meaningful purpose. So driving the societal impact of a business is very important to it. And then, of course, we have to deliver above market returns to our investors, because behind the investors sits 15 million workers and pensioners. And our purpose is to better their welfare by managing their savings in a good way.
So a lot of people have said, in order to tackle the climate emergency head on, it's going to be finance, breakthrough technology, and behavioral change.
Yeah.
What's the priority in your mind?
I think it's the funding gap. Because the funding gap, if you don't close that, you're not going to be able to develop and scale the technology that you lead.
Truly fascinating speaking with you here today. We wish you all the best with the rest of COP28, and thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me.